Hi, this is Joel Selvin, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast, with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart, weekly music news for the new music business.
From Variety, David Guetta replicated Eminem's voice in a song using artificial intelligence.
From publicknowledge.org, streaming in the dark, where music listeners' money goes and doesn't.
From Music Business Worldwide, global recorded music revenues reached $31.2 billion in 2022, but year-over-year growth slowed significantly.
And from Billboard, rebuilding the touring industry from scratch, a South by Southwest 2023 panel recap. All right, Jay, we've been talking for a half an hour already before we even hit record, but we've got so many things to talk about. And man, we got to get going. We got to get going right now, Jay. So let's push the button right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
All right, Jay, man, so good to see you on a Sunday as we record today, and we've been going over the things we're going to talk about, and man, oh man, oh man, and your arms are tired because you got back from South by Southwest, and
Yeah.
what a busy week.
Yeah, crazy week. And this week, these stories, it's like an embarrassment of riches. There is so much going on in the music industry. This week, we're going to cover this really cool report from publicknowledge.org. Music Business Worldwide dropped some information on the global music business just in front of the IFPI report that you and I have been talking about. And last week, we covered the RIAA report, which, of course, is U.S. IFPI is global. And so is this report from Music Business Worldwide. Lots of great stuff to cover.
Oh yeah, I can hardly wait. And of course, this week we had some passings. What I wanted to actually mention, and I'll tell you why I'm mentioning them. Although, as far as I know, both of the artists that we lost this week did not know each other. They're roughly the same age. Bobby Caldwell, of course, had this great song that we're playing right now, "What You Won't Do for Love." But the reason that Mercuriadis's words are echoing in my ear when I was reading some of the obituaries is how important those songs were and continue to be important. What You Won't Do for Love came out back in '78. It was a big hit then, but since then it's been recorded by Natalie Cole, Roy Ayers, Phyllis Hyman, Go West, Victor Wooten, Michael Bolton, Boyz II Men, also importantly sampled on that Tupac Shakur track "Do for Love" back in '98. These songs, Jay, they just keep going and going and going. The importance of songs, and that was such a great song. And then the drummer Jim Gordon passed away, a very tragic figure.
Yeah.
We had Joel Selvin do our intro, and Joel has a book coming out on Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon was a member of the original Wrecking Crew back in the day. He played on a ton of albums. He was on Pet Sounds, a lot of albums. He was, of course, in Mad Dogs and Englishmen. He was on that tour with Joe Cocker. He co-wrote Layla, the piano break at the end, which he stole from his then-girlfriend Rita Coolidge. But the reason that I'm talking about him today, too, and I didn't know this until I read his obituary, is he played on this very odd sort of pretend band called the Incredible Bongo Band, and they did a cover of a song called Apache back in 1973, which we're playing right now. But that drum break with bongo drums became literally the most foundational hip-hop sample ever done. It's on more than 750 songs. And of course, they had a whole documentary about it called Sample This. And that was Jim Gordon playing on that. But Jim, of course, tragically killed his mom and was in a mental institution for the remainder of his life.
Yeah.
Oof, tragic story, but Joel's book, I'm sure, will be fascinating. But anyway, the power of the song, Jay. You know, these guys did songs and played on songs that we're still talking about and still making money. And amazing stuff. So, let's
amazing
but let's start
stuff.
going into our stories, Jay.
Oh, we have so much to talk about today. We'll just jump right in. But before we do get into the stories, anyway, last week we did a deep dive on Spotify's recent Stream On announcements.
We did
lots of talk in the news last week, and I want to touch on something that Tim Ingham from Music Business Worldwide brought up on his Talking Trends podcast last week. He identified something that much of, I think, the music industry press may have missed, and that is, from the CMA, that's the UK Competition and Markets Authority. It's a competition watchdog that actually has teeth in the UK. They asked major music streaming platforms for data surrounding how users listen to the music on their platforms. The report concluded that only about 10 to 20% of Spotify's plays, that's in the UK anyway, were from their own algatorial playlist. And of course, algatorial, that's a mashup of algorithmic and editorial, right? So in other words, tracks pushed by algorithmic recommendations based on user preferences versus over 50% of those plays coming from user-curated playlists, 10 to 20% of plays that weren't from any playlist at all.
Wow. So that means that 60 to 80% of Spotify plays are not associated with Spotify's recommendations.
Right.
You may ask, so why is that such an important stat? Well, the case for Spotify's differentiation in the market is almost entirely predicated on its algorithmic recommendations. Spotify, as you know, has the same 100 million or so tracks that Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music has. And of course, since Spotify purchased Echo Nest back in 2015, they have continually made the argument that its recommendation engine is the most sophisticated and knowing of its customer base in the music industry. And that, of course, supports their position as a market leader.
Yes, but that doesn't mean if less than 1/5 of the plays on Spotify are influenced by their algorithm, that means that 4/5 are chosen by users and influenced off platform. So great job with Tim Ingham, as always. I don't know if he's actually human. I've never heard him make a mistake. He's just like perfect. Maybe Tim Ingham is AI, but I love his podcast. I never miss an episode, and we're actually covering a story this week from Music Business Worldwide. But the first story that we're talking about today has got a lot of people talking, and it was from Variety. And David Guetta, the EDM artist, he replicated Eminem's voice in a song. And he did it using artificial intelligence, AI. And it really sounds amazing. If nobody had told me, I would have thought that that was Eminem.
Of course. Now, of course, in the past year, one of the hottest topics in the music industry has been the use of AI, or artificial intelligence, in creating music. There was a piece in Variety last week written by Tania Garcia or Tania Garcia? I'm going to go with Tania Garcia, with the headline, David Guetta replicated Eminem's voice in a song using artificial intelligence.
Right. Guetta recently shared a video of himself playing a song during one of his sets that used the AI technology to create a song in the style of Eminem. And he explains how he did it. In the audio we're about to play for you, Guetta is heard hyping up this massive crowd with an unreleased track featuring a replica of Eminem's voice. The AI voice is heard saying, this is the future of rave sound. I'm getting awesome and underground. Let's take a listen.
This is the future rave sound. I'm getting awesome and underground. This is the future rave sound. I'm getting awesome and underground.
Eminem, bro. There's something that I made as a joke, and it works so good, I could not believe it. I discovered any artist you like. So I typed, write a verse in the style of Eminem about future rave. And I went to another AI website that can recreate the voice. I put the text in that, and I played the record, and people went nuts.
This is the future rave sound. I'm getting awesome and underground. This is the future rave sound. I'm getting awesome and underground.
My God. In the responses to the video, Guetta made sure to clarify that he would obviously not be commercially distributing the song, a debate that was almost immediately sparked in the comments of that original video. Throughout the past few months, more AI-generated content has gone viral on platforms like TikTok. Fans have been taking already existing songs and using AI software to make them sound like another artist is singing them, with the voices of some of the most recognizable artists like Bad Bunny, Ariana Grande, and Billie Eilish being replicated.
Last month, music generator site Drake.it, and Drake is spelled DRAYK. .it. This site made headlines for its ability to create AI Drake songs. The viral platform ran for a short period of time, but now it doesn't exist, likely due to legal issues attached to using the artist image without consent. Some artists have already expressed their disapproval of the technology through conversations and debates that are still developing. And you and I have covered this in the past, and we've talked about it, but it's starting to heat up, and it's moving pretty quickly now, where you can go in, and I did it just to see if I could do it. You go into it could be Chat GPT, it could be your AI text of choice, and you say, write me a song, or write me a chorus or a verse in the style of a particular artist. And sometimes it's silly, like I did one and it wasn't even close, but I did another one that looked exactly like what that artist would have written. And then there's all sorts of software programs out there where they'll create melodies. And I think the one that David Guetta used, if I'm not mistaken, he used Chat GPT to generate the lyric, and then used a platform called UberDuck to create the music behind it. Or no, not the music behind it. He used Chat GPT for the text, and then he used UberDuck to replicate Eminem's voice. That's what it was.
Oh my God, the future is here, to say the least. It is absolutely crazy. And I think we mentioned, was it last week or the week before, there are moves afoot to figure out, how do you copyright something like that? And what do you do? What are the elements that need to be non-AI generated, i.e. more human generated? How much of that needs to be, because you can sort of start the process, right? As somebody who's kind of, dabbled in songwriting, one of the advantages to me of that is not necessarily to do something completely creative, but when you get stuck, when you bump into something like a chord progression, right, or a lyric that you want a little help with, to suggestions or something like that. So
right,
as we move forward, how will these things be copyrighted? Can they be copyrighted? How much human interaction can be, noted or documented, right, in terms of the process. It's so many things to consider.
We're talking about two different things here, though. We're talking about there are platforms like Lyric Studio, so you can put in the lyrics that you've written, and it'll help you finish your song. And they're coming out with a new version of it's called Melody Studio, where you can do that with music. And to use AI to help your creative process, that's one thing.
Yes.
But there's a couple of other things. One is you and I covered a story a couple of weeks ago where if there's a song that's being generated by AI, and I'm not talking about something in the style of somebody else, but just a song that's created, lyrics, music, using completely AI and no human, then that's not copyrightable today, according to the piece that we covered. But then it gets really tricky when, well, if I'm writing a song in the style of Eminem, it's clearly drawing from his work in the past. And that, I'm no lawyer, but would mean that you would have to, there would have to be some type of publishing associated with that. And I'll leave our audience with this. You and I are actively right now reaching out to our friends that are music industry attorneys, and we're going to see if we can get someone on to give us some clarity in this whole field.
And Jay, I was enjoying getting texts from you this week from things that were happening at South by Southwest. I'm going to guess that you had a really good time there.
Yeah, it was a good week. South by Southwest, it's just phenomenal because it covers, film, TV, music, sports, all sorts of things. But I got to spend some time with a lot of great people. I was traveling with Scott Pappas. I got to have breakfast with Larry Miller from NYU. It was fantastic. Larry Matera. There were a couple of cool events. Symphonic had a mixer, and special shout out to Jorge and Randall and Jeanette and Michael and that great team over there. Music Tectonics had a really cool mixer. Got to hang out with Vasya Weber from Viberate and Kristen Grant and Dick Wingate and a whole bunch of other great people. But some of the panels were just phenomenal, and I'll just mention a couple of them. One was called The Streaming Debate, Lessons from Abroad. And Tom Gray from Ivers Academy was the moderator there. But our friend Garrett Levin from Dema was on that, with Amy Thompson from Hypnosis, who I got to say hi to really quickly, Autumn Rose, who is a songwriter. Amazing conversation. I'm sort of waiting for Music Ally. Typically, they cover these conferences and then do kind of recaps of the panels. I'm hoping that they're going to do something like that this year. The other one I wanted to mention really quickly is the impact of GDPR for music rights holders. And GDPR, if you don't know, is General Data Protection Regulation. So the impact of GDPR on music rights holders. And that was with Sharon Tapper from Artist Managers Forum in the U.S., Kristen Grant, who I just mentioned, Vasya Weber from Viberate, and Nizam Hoffman from FXR. And just a quick honorable mention, you and I were talking about a story we read in Billboard this last week that was basically kind of a recap of a panel. And I didn't see the panel, but I read the article. It was called Rebuilding the Touring Industry from Scratch. And that was moderated by Billboard's Taylor Mims, featuring panelist Sarah Mertz. She's the VP of Music Partnerships at Tixar. Liz Norris, who's a manager and activist artist management with Activist Artist Management, that's easy for you to say, and Sarah Tehrani, who's a music touring agent at WME. But that was a really interesting panel and really interesting article. What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about it again. So this, again, was the Rebuilding the Touring Industry from Scratch. And this is a panel recap that Billboard did. And it says the panel discussed the touring industry's post-pandemic status. And a few highlights. Sarah Tehrani, she's, of course, as you mentioned, over at WME, she said, rather than these big throw everything at the wall and see what sticks festivals that are focused on going and discovering new music, we're seeing more interest in boutique festivals. Some artists Tehrani works with, like R&B singer-songwriter Umi, have eventrified. That's another sort of interesting word. Eventrified, incorporating new elements to make their tours stand out, like adding a meditation practice offered as a VIP experience at her shows to boost fan engagement and spread her passion for wellness. Such experiences are becoming more crucial as the cost of touring continues to rise with inflation, and as a result of cutbacks on positions like bus drivers and sound engineers, leaving consumers to be pickier about which shows they attend.
Yeah, but still, this strategy is challenged by a high no-show rate. Attrition remains an issue, said Sarah Mertz. She's the one from Tixar. She said, I don't know what it is. I was just meeting with a couple of clients last week, and they're like, we don't understand it. At our sold-out shows, still 20 to 25% of people are not showing up. Why? Having a therapist and a physical therapist on the road is new. This was Sarah Tarani who said that. We've also had vocal coaches and stuff like that, but people are definitely thinking about how to take better care of each other, and that's a very good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole thing about no-shows, that was really weird and interesting to make that comment. And I've kind of noticed that at some of the concerts I've been to that, when you were looking for tickets, there was almost nothing available. And then you go and, there's just a ton of empty seats. And I think they were kind of attributing that to a lot of the scalpers and how that's really kind of increased. But gosh, I'm sure you're doing the same thing. There's so many amazing shows that are going to be out on the road this summer. And it's really hard to choose. I mean, I wish I had far more money than I do, because I would love to see a lot of these, but you have to make tough decisions about what to go to and what to spend your money on, because there are so many choices. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there you have it. Well, let's jump into our number 2 one, Jay. This is so interesting. This is from publicknowledge.org. Mm-hmm. This is a big wonder. And, we've talked in the past about things that you must download and print and have in a little file folder of really just fantastic information. And this is one
for
of
sure.
those.
Yeah,
Streaming
I definitely printed this thing out. Yeah, go ahead.
Me too. Streaming in the dark, where music listeners' money goes and doesn't.
Right. And this was by Meredith Rose. She's senior policy counsel at publicknowledge.org, where she focuses on copyright, DMCA, intellectual property reform, government issues, etc. Fantastic job. But it's a big report. It's a long report, and we're basically only going to cover the summary and then a section called "Where's all the money going?" But I highly encourage our readers and listeners to download this report. It's in your morning coffee. It is fantastic. So let's talk about the executive summary. This paper, it really proceeds from what might be the only universal point of agreement in all of music policy. And that is that the streaming marketplace is fundamentally broken. Consumers are pouring more than $12 billion a year into music streaming services. From there, it enters a dark labyrinth economy shaped by centuries-old laws and unchecked market power. When that money emerges out of the other side and reaches artists, it's been reduced to fractions of pennies.
Right. She goes on to say, our ability to scrutinize that black box has been methodically and strategically hampered by the use of non-disclosure agreements. Of course, NDAs is the acronym for that. On its face, we don't know much about what happens to that money, but what we do know is disconcerting, and what can reverse engineer is outright alarming. What we can reverse engineer, I should say. The streaming and music industries are both breeding grounds for anti-competitive behavior. Astronomical licensing costs have squeezed the streaming market and created a world where music streaming is treated as a loss leader for the world's wealthiest tech companies. Licensing deals are riddled with payola and other kickbacks which maximize wealth for major labels while minimizing how much they have to pay out to artists.
Yeah. Meanwhile, power middlemen, as they put it, control choke points within the music industry. Major labels and superstar talent claim the overwhelming majority of the financial pie, leaving small and independent artists and the labels to pick up the scraps. And they do this under strict secrecy, keeping effective change and accountability at arm's length.
Right, and Meredith says if we can agree to that, if we can agree that the system is broken, then we can also argue there must be a way forward. At a minimum, the Federal Trade Commission must pierce the NDA curtain to study this marketplace and determine just how bad things are and where. From there, the question becomes one of not whether major reforms should follow, but which ones. Lawmakers have a vast array of tools at their disposal, from antitrust laws to fair dealing mandates to app store regulation to whistleblower protections. Not one of these is going to work on its own. Cleaning up the mess is going to take a little bit of everything.
So that's the executive summary. Let's dig into the section, where is all the money going? All right. So customers, as you just mentioned, they're paying streaming services $12 billion this last year. This is one of the few pieces of the puzzle where there's, a concrete public number. Consumers spend that $12 billion on streaming, right? Okay, so Music Watch's consumer study estimates that consumers spend an average of $98 per person each year on recorded music across all formats, $98. However, limitations in the data suggest that the overall number may be substantially higher. While that's below the 1999 peak of $23.7 billion, adjusted for inflation, of course, it's also up from 2014 when it hit bottom at $7.7 billion.
Right. So talking about subscription pricing, most streaming services offer multiple tiers, of course, of paid subscriptions, from bare bones ad-free options to multi-user family plans or plans offering HD sound quality. Standard individual plans range from $4.99 to $10.99 a month, with deluxe plans in the $15.99 to $19.99 a month range. Although we have some data on the effect of price changes on consumer preferences in the context of physical music, public data on how pricing affects consumer streaming behavior is limited. Many streaming services also offer an ad-supported or freemium option. These bring in substantially less revenue, primarily through advertising and or collection of consumer data, and pay lower per-stream rates to rights holders.
Right. And as we're looking at these payouts, there's one I hadn't really thought about, and that's, if you purchase through an app store, and those payment processors, right? Everybody's kind of taken a little bite of this all along the chain. So, for services with mobile apps, the app stores can also take a slice. Generally, app stores take between 15 and 30% of in-app purchases and subscriptions. The amount has long been a sticking point within the app industry, but until early 2022, the Apple App Store forbade apps from including outside links to web-based signups. This meant that app developers who wanted to offer subscriptions had to do it either in the app, suggesting the subscription fee to Apple's 30% cut, or hope their customers independently found their way to the service's web-based sign-up. The policy was quietly adjusted in early 2022 to allow certain app developers, such as Spotify and Netflix, to request, but not guarantee, the right to point subscribers to web-based sign-up forms.
Interesting. For a time, a Spotify premium subscription purchased on the web cost $9.99, while the same subscription purchased through the iOS app was priced at $12.99 to compensate for Apple's fees. And this is in parentheses now. It says Spotify has since discontinued the option to purchase subscriptions through the iOS app altogether. For subscriptions managed outside of an app store, payment processors such as Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal also take a slice off of subscription fees. However, these numbers appear to be comparatively small, between 1% to 4%, with high volume services at the lower range. So if we assume around 1.5%, that would shave off roughly $180 million from the total pot. That means that approximately that means that approximately $11.82 billion makes it into the hands of the DSPs.
This number keeps getting whittled down further and further.
Yes, it does.
So the other part of this, where's all the money going? Let's take a look at the payments to rights holders. And you and I make that clear a lot, because when you hear somebody complain that a DSP like Spotify or Apple Music isn't paying the artists enough, That's because typically they don't pay the artist unless the artist is the rights holder. It's usually, the distributor and of course the record label. And that is of that pie, that's $8.28 billion. But as the report says, thanks to the pervasive NDA, non-disclosure agreement, culture around music, streaming deals, public data on the cost, volume, and contours of DSP licensing agreements is nearly non-existent. What we have instead are aggregate estimates. And the CMA inquiry revealed that, of that $12 billion of consumer money spent on streaming, approximately $8.28 billion, or 69%, transfers through to the rights holders. And that's something we've talked about a lot on this podcast, is that the way that breaks down roughly is 70% goes to the rights holders and 30% stays with the DSP. And the industry thinks that's fair, and that's really what iTunes was doing when downloads were the major configuration.
Right. So when you're talking about what DSPs keep, how much do services keep for themselves? There are no comprehensive public numbers, but again, we can rely on the averages put forward by the parliamentary report and confirmed by estimates published by DEMA. DSPs pocket, as you were saying, Jay, about 31% of consumer dollars, or about $3.72 billion. Notably, a broad sampling of industry stakeholders agreed that it was basically reasonable for that, but we're also talking kind of on the before we hit record about just their infrastructure and their rents and everything. There's a lot going on of what DSPs. They have lovely offices and they've got a lot of overhead. It's expensive to run businesses these days, and they live pretty large when you're talking rents and employee salaries.
100%. And so despite that impressive number that you just recited, streaming services are notoriously unprofitable. Spotify has famously never managed an annual profit, despite one quarterly success, I think, in 2018, and an encore performance in Q3 of 2019. And then Deezer, which was founded in 2007, earned praise for its ambitious goal of setting 2025 as a target date for profitability. The financials for Tidal, which was purchased by fintech firm Block back in 2021, these are obfuscated. Under the firm's public reporting, the finances of services such as Apple Music, Amazon, and YouTube Music, they're not generally broken out from their parent companies in public reporting. So profit is, of course, not only the only measure of success. It is, however, salient and apparently elusive one.
Elusive. Sure. The move to digital distribution has allowed labels to eliminate many of the costs incurred, obviously, by physical distribution, while also offloading their financial risk to DSPs. Traditional costs that fall to the record labels with physical distribution, such as manufacturing, storing, and transporting the product, or for breakage or returns, do not apply for streaming, of course. Instead, the internet has simultaneously allowed for frictionless transfer of assets from the label to the service. Concurrently, the costs incurred by digital distribution have been transferred to and are borne by the streaming service.
So who else takes a piece? The answer is what the report calls rights holder middlemen. And it's difficult, again, to get exact figures due to secrecy and NDAs, those non-disclosure agreements. Most of what we know about licensing agreements is via secondhand sources and leaks. Most licensing contracts are bound by NDAs. That means that details like rates, non-cash payments, and beneficiaries of each are obscured from both the public and often the artists from whom record companies claim to advocate.
So let's talk about the rights holder Minutemen. The most obvious ones are distributors and aggregators. We also talk about CRMs, collective rights management. These nonprofit organizations are responsible for licensing, tracking, and collecting publishing royalties earned, and then paying them out to the respective songwriters and or publishers.
Right, and other rights holder middlemen that they point out are PROs, performing rights organizations, like in the U.S., ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR. Each of these have songwriter members and publisher members. While a songwriter can sign with one PRO, a publisher can split its catalog around multiple PROs.
Right. And of course, songwriters may also be represented by the Mechanical Rights Organization, the MROs, getting out your decoder, your acronym decoder ring. The primary MRO is the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which was established in 2018 by the Music Modernization Act and granted the ability to issue blanket mechanical licenses for all compositions, even when the rights holder is currently unknown. The bottom line here is a lack of transparency. One survey found that more than half of music managers did not know the share arrangement between DSPs and their label. 2/3 did not know the agreed minimum payments for their own artists.
Yeah, and the report also talks about what it calls payola. Now, I'm not necessarily, big on that term because that implies pay for play on our airwaves, like with radio. That's not disclosed because, as you know, if you disclose that you're playing this song on the radio and it's been paid for, that's not illegal. It becomes illegal when you don't tell people that it was paid for.
Right.
And since streaming isn't on public airwaves, this doesn't quite measure up to payola, but we'll go through it. It says licensing deals between DSPs and major rights holders typically include kickbacks and other non-cash payments. Labels have leveraged their catalog to secure equity stakes, algorithmic amplification of preferred artists, user demographic and consumption data, and advertising discounts. The aggregate result is that major rights holders negotiate for and secure numerous invisible forms of compensation that influence both the streaming service and the label's payment to their own artists.
Right. So researchers have discovered that songs from major labels, this is in quotation or in quotes, feature on popular Spotify playlists at a disproportionately higher rate than independent songs and are overrepresented in the recommendation process, with Universal's and Warner's overrepresentation even being further amplified over iterations of a recommendation engine. This is likely due to the degree of leverage majors possess over the service.
Yeah. Although the avenues and players, they've shifted over the years, but the core idea remains unchanged, and that is the undisclosed payment or acceptance of payment in cash or kind for promotion of a song, album, or artist. That's what they're calling payola, and you'll note that it says the undisclosed payment, right? So how do we fix it? The music industry is addicted to secrecy. Secrecy is powerful. It entrenches market power, allows blame shifting, and presents artists from effectively demanding better treatment. Most importantly, secrecy allows those with the most information, which is labels and DSPs, to substitute public relations wars and finger pointing for actual reform.
Right. This report goes on to say the Federal Trade Commission has a crucial role to play in all this. That role begins with the commission of a study under its Section 6B authority. The study should investigate industry practices related to streaming more broadly, but should focus specifically on the following. Number one, non-cash compensation in DSP distributor agreements, which they were again referring to as payola. Number two, its impact on artist payments, aka the black box. Number three, streaming advances and breakage. Number four, concentration among record companies, including whether their distributors have the incentive and ability to self-preference in contracts with DSPs and whether previous mergers should be unwound. And number five, the prevalence and impact of NDAs agreements in artist contracts. No meaningful change, they say, can come without lifting the NDA curtain.
Wow. I mean, this report is absolutely mind-blowing as you go through it, and we're just scratching the surface of it. Again, it's in your morning coffee. It's called Streaming in the Dark, Where Music Listeners' Money Goes and Doesn't, by Meredith Rose. She's from publicknowledge.org. Fantastic job to Meredith and her team that's one of those reports you're going to want to print and highlight and keep on hand. There's a lot of great information in there.
And read again. But it makes me think back to the report we talked about, or the issue with Universal Music and Tidal wanting to kind of reimagine what a streaming system can look like. But when you read this report and you think about all of these things, again, whether you agree or disagree with the things we were talking about, it just certainly goes to show you that there are so many issues and so many things to consider when you theoretically are going to kind of reimagine what this should look like to be a more fair process.
Right.
There's just tons of things in there. And as this points out, this article, this report, that so many things are opaque. It's like, we're making sort of guesstimates on what's going on behind that curtain, but we don't really know. Could be better, could be worse. And it's a gigantic job.
And it's a call for transparency. So, yeah.
Yes, it is indeed. Wow, I love that. And let's go on to our next one, Jay. Our next story we're going to talk about, which is from Music Business Worldwide. Global recorded music revenues reached $31.2 billion in 2022, but year-over-year growth slowed, as they say, significantly.
Yeah, and this is by Murray Stassen, Music Business Worldwide. Again, one of our favorite sources. They're so great. And one of the things that we were talking about last week as we covered the RIAA, that's the U.S. Snapshot of the music business. Every 6 months, they release that report. And on the worldwide level, it's the IFPI report. And that's coming out in a few days, and I'm sure we'll cover it next week on the podcast. But Music Business Worldwide, they do their own math and their own estimates, and it's usually pretty in line, with IFPI. So we're getting kind of a sneak peek of really what's coming in that report. But according to Music Business Worldwide's report, again published last week, global recorded music revenues grew 6.7% year over year. And that's to reach $31.2 billion. And remember what Glenn Peoples said last week that we talked about, is that we're used to these double-digit growth numbers. So when you see 6.7%, even though that's very positive, it's not what we've been expecting. So Media notes that its estimates come a few days ahead of the release of the IFPI's, annual global music report.
So that 6.7% growth estimate for 2022 is also significantly down on IFPI's own growth figure for 2021, which it reported in March of last year to be an increase of 18.5% versus 2020. Media Managing Director Mark Mulligan, overall market growth was down in 2022 compared to 2021. 2021 was in many respects a year of artificially accentuated post-COVID growth, while 2022 was at the opposite, not today apparently, while 2022 was at the opposite end of the scale with a host of economic headwinds. He added, in this context, 6.7% growth for 2022 could be considered even more of an achievement than the 24.8% achieved back in 2021.
Interesting. He also noted that 2022 was a year of realignment for much of the global economy, and that the music business had to contend not only with a wider trend of cost of living crisis, but also rising interest rates, softening music catalog, mergers and acquisitions, that demand, and the long expected streaming slowdown kicking in. However, he said that the global recorded music industry's modest growth in 2022 is a testament to the solidity of the recorded music market, that despite these multiple headwinds.
Indeed. Mulligan notes further that the persistent value of music was even more strongly illustrated by music publishing, which media estimates grew by 16.6% year over year in 2022. As is to be expected, streaming was again the primary driver of global record industry growth, with revenues estimated by media to have grown 8.3% year over year, or by $1.5 billion to $20 billion in 2022.
Yeah, Media pins this declaration on slowing paid subscription growth in mature markets and a slowdown in ad-supported revenues, which it says reflects a wider advertising market dynamics. Music subscriber growth was markedly stronger, according to Media, which it estimates was up by 13.7% to 652 million globally.
Right. It notes, however, that the most mature North American and European regions accounted for just a third of global annual subscriber growth. Mark goes on to say emerging markets will become a progressively larger part of global streaming growth, but due to lower ARPU and low shares of Anglo repertoire, the divergence between growth revenue and subscriber growth rate seen in 2022 will become a long-term market characteristic.
Yeah, this is just such a fantastic report. They go on to say that overall streaming accounted for 64.1% of recorded music industry revenues worldwide in 2022. What they don't point out is that when we covered the RIAA report, is that in the U.S. it's 84% of the business. So 64% globally, 84% in the U.S. Media breaks out its estimates for major record company revenues, and they report that the Universal Music Group added more annual recorded music revenue in 2022 than the other two majors, Sony Music Group and Warner Music Group.
Right. So both of our former employer UMG grew its annual recorded music revenue by $500 million in 2022 to reach $9.2 billion, says Media, giving Universal a 29.5% share of the global recorded music market. According to Media's estimates, UMG's year-over-year revenue growth in percentage terms, which is up 6.2% in 2022, was slower than Sony Music Group's at 8.7% up, with Sony Music Group gaining an estimated 0.4 points of global market share.
Interesting. Also in this report, Media estimates that independent labels and artists direct, aka do-it-yourself artists, they both strongly outperform the wider streaming market. So independent labels, indie artists are outperforming the wider streaming market. The two sectors grew year over year, streaming revenues by almost 14% and 18% respectively.
Yeah. So again, these artists direct, who release without labels directly via distributor, according to Media, were the big success story once again, with their revenues growing, as you mentioned, Jay, by about 17% year over year in 2022 to generate $1.78 billion of recorded music revenue. That gave the artist direct segment a 5.7% global market share, says Media, up from 5.2% back in 2021.
Interesting. Independent labels also outgrew the wider market, says Media, increasing their recorded music revenues by about 7% year over year. And it's important to note that Media clarifies that independent labels, in its estimates, do not include revenue generated by those indie labels that are distributed by major record companies. So this revenue is instead included under the majors' revenue. So fantastic report from Mark Mulligan and his team over at Media. And I love the recap from Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide. There's a lot of positivity, a lot of things to take out of that, especially on the indie music and indie artist side.
That was really interesting, isn't it? Well, and to see UMG's dominance too. Boy, they're just killing it over there. So it's... all of these things are so interesting, and again, the thing that we keep talking about, the most dramatic change in what everything streaming has brought to the table in terms of the business of music is a predictable revenue stream. And we still haven't reached that 1999 number just yet, but boy, the just dramatic changes that particular thing has made has just... it dominates everything we talk about still, when you're talking about the acquisition of catalogs and all of that. And it's all down to streaming revenue being consistent. And all of these, it's hard to even remember almost what it was like, hustling things out for Christmas release. And it's just
Q4.
That's not a part of the business anymore. Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
it's a totally different business. And it's just moving so fast. And in this episode of the podcast, we're talking about some things that really relate to each other. Like with AI moving as fast as it's moving right now, it reminds me of, when downloads happen and then when streaming happened. It's the technology is unstoppable, and it's just taking the industry a moment to catch up to that. And I love reading these numbers from media. But also, as we dig into that report from publicknowledge.org, we realize there's a lot that needs to be done because there's record profits being made. And now we have to, start from scratch and really get some transparency into the economics of where the dollars go for all of this, so everybody's paid fairly.
Right. But boy, considering all of those things that they were bringing up, all of those issues in that report, reworking this is going to be such a gigantic headache, to be honest. I mean, it has to be done. But man, I don't know if I want to be sitting at that table because there's so many things to consider, so many different buckets that have to be realigned in a different way to make it more fair. And boy, that, and how do you get rid of NDAs and how do you pierce that veil? I don't know. Can you even do that? I mean, those are legal documents. Yeah.
Well, they say
where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. In their report, they definitely say there is a way legally, and it's through the government. It's through a committee that can look into those things and just make sure that we know what's happening. Because right now, they talked about it in the report. Managers don't even know what's going on with their artists and how the payment flows. So, and of course the artists don't as well.
Still a very opaque system. But, as we wrap up this edition of the podcast, Jay, we would be remiss if we didn't thank our sponsors because they do it every time for us, including Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Ah, yes, Bands in Town. Over 74 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform, connecting over 560,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yes, and we are also sponsored by the Music Business Association. For more than 6 decades, the Music Biz Conference has been the point of origin for inspiration and collaboration in the music business. Join us and them for the Music Business Conference in Nashville, May 15th through the 18th. So big thanks to the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. And on that note, Jay, let us wrap up this edition of the podcast. We do want to thank everyone for listening in. Boy, there was a lot of numbers spewed about today, but it's fascinating, and the business continues to be healthy. Let's just leave it at that. That's probably a good summation. And so on that note, we appreciate you listening in, and we'll see you next time on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.